The room was enveloped in silence, so profound that you could hear the soft click of Keanu's watch as he adjusted it on his wrist. No glam squad, no entourage. Just him seated across from me in a faded olive jacket and a black t-shirt that seemed to have weathered many storms. He nodded once, granting me permission to begin. "Before we start," I said gently, "I just want to express my gratitude." He interrupted, not unkindly, but with honesty. "I know why you're here. There's a question people have been dancing around for years." I waited as he looked down at his hands, calloused and grounded, then lifted his gaze, calm and undeniable. "There's one person," he said, "I've never forgiven. One name I've never spoken out loud." I remained silent. The air felt heavy. It wasn't merely a confession. It was something weightier, as if he was finally placing a burden on the table that had rested on his shoulders for 60 years. "For a long time," he continued, "I thought I had to be quiet to survive. I lost my father when I was 3, lost my best friend at 29, lost my daughter before she was born, and then her mother right after." His voice didn't break. It simply narrowed like a blade being sharpened. "I forgave many people," he said, "even those who didn't ask. I thought that was the right thing to do." I leaned forward slightly, sensing the gravity of the moment. "But not this one person," he shook his head. "No, because this wasn't just pain. It was betrayal, and it came from someone I trusted. Someone who used my silence against me." There was a long pause, not the kind that drags, but one that holds weight. "You're not here for gossip," he added. "You're here for the truth, and I'm finally ready to share it." I opened my notebook but didn't write. I didn't want to disrupt the moment with the scratch of a pen. "Before I say the name," Keanu said, "I want people to understand something. Forgiveness isn't weakness, and silence isn't peace. Sometimes silence is what people use when they're afraid no one will believe them." "And today?" I asked quietly. "Today," he said, "I believe myself." He looked me straight in the eyes for the first time. "You ready?" he asked. I nodded, but he didn't say it. Not yet. Instead, he leaned back, took a breath, and said almost to himself, "Let's start at the beginning." With that, the past, long buried beneath years of silence, stoicism, and cinematic heroism, began to speak. "It started with a suitcase," Keanu said, though he didn't specify whose. We were still seated in the same quiet room. But now the light from the window had shifted, stretching longer across the floor. Shadows grew behind him like memories coming into focus. "I was 3, he continued, when my father walked out the front door in Honolulu with a duffel bag over his shoulder. No fight, no dramatic scene, just gone." He stared straight ahead, eyes unfocused, as if watching that moment on some internal screen. I remember the silence afterward more than I remember his voice. His mother, Patricia Taylor, was a costume designer with hands always stained in thread and chalk. "She kept us moving, always moving," he said. "I think she was trying to outrun the ache from Beirut to Sydney, then to New York, and finally Toronto. 4 countries before I turned 10. Each city left its own echo. A school I didn't finish, a face I never saw again, a language I barely learned before forgetting. Nothing stuck," he said. "Not homes, not friends, not hope." He scratched the edge of his jaw, and for the first time I saw something flicker. Restlessness, perhaps, or the muscle memory of a child trying to sit still in places he didn't belong. "People talk about roots," Keanu said. I didn't have any. I was always the new kid, always the kid with a weird name. He smiled faintly, not out of fondness but recognition. Keanu Charles Reeves, a name too Hawaiian for some, too foreign for others, and too easy to mock in hallways and classrooms that never kept me long enough to care. "I had undiagnosed dyslexia," he continued. "Reading was like trying to walk underwater. Teachers said I was lazy, distracted. My report cards looked like alphabet soup, just D's and F's. 4 high schools in 5 years. At each one, he arrived invisible and left forgotten. But I remember lockers," he said quietly. "They all made the same metal sound when you shut them. That's what stuck with me. Not the people, not the lessons, just the clang. At home, things weren't better. Patricia did her best. She remarried, then again and again. There were always new men, Keanu said. They'd show up like rescue boats, then disappear. Paul Aaron, one of her husbands, was a theater director who tried to mentor him. He showed me backstage once, Keanu said. It smelled like sawdust and sweat and dreams. For a moment, I thought maybe this one would stay. He didn't. The pattern repeated. Promise, then silence. Keanu learned to stop expecting permanence, to stop expecting apologies. At 13, he saw his biological father one last time in Hawaii. It wasn't a reunion, he said. It was a formality. No hugs, no real words, just a stranger with my eyes. When he said that, I didn't press further. I couldn't, because the boy in that memory wasn't just abandoned by a man. He'd been left behind by the idea of family itself. They called me the wall, Keanu said with a half-smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. We had shifted into the second hour of the interview. The light outside had dimmed. The room now a shade cooler, quieter. His voice had too much stillness in it for a man describing the one thing he was once great at. Hockey was the first place I ever felt solid, he said. I didn't have to talk, didn't have to read anything. I just had to stop the puck. He had played goalie for De La Salle College's hockey team in Toronto. The coaches didn't expect much. He wasn't the biggest kid, but once he stepped into the net, everything else fell away. All the noise, the broken homes, the bad grades, the loneliness evaporated. On the ice, no one cared if you had dyslexia, he said. You just had to react, block, survive. That I could do. His save percentage was solid. A 2.1 goals against average. They won the city championship in '82, but even then, when the team hoisted the trophy, Keanu didn't raise it high. He just held it in one hand like something temporary. I think I already knew it wouldn't last, he murmured. Around that time, the idea of acting entered. Not like a calling, but more like a quiet nudge. A high school performance, a friend's dare. A monologue read too seriously in English class. I wasn't good, he admitted, but I felt awake. Still, no agent was interested in a half-Asian kid with a strange first name. Keanu was too exotic, too ethnic. They said it wouldn't fit on a marquee, he said, shaking his head. They wanted me to change it, and for 2 years he did. At auditions, he introduced himself as Casey Reeves. Said it like a lie he hoped would sound natural with enough repetition. But every time I said Casey, it felt like I was wearing someone else's skin. In 1987, he stopped pretending. I decided if I failed, I'd fail as me. That same year, he landed a small role in River's Edge, his first real film. It wasn't glamorous. The character was quiet, haunted, distant, but the director noticed something. He told me I was still Keanu, he recalled, said it made people lean in. He didn't know what to make of that. Most actors are trained to command attention. Keanu absorbed it like a goalie, like the wall, but the climb was slow. Between bit parts and missed callbacks, he took odd jobs. Tree cutter, pasta chef, CBC youth reporter. He filmed a Coca-Cola commercial pretending to be a beach jock, earning $10,500. Then at night, he performed Shakespeare for free. No paycheck, just applause from 20 people and a director who believed in him. And yet, he kept showing up. Tired, rejected, sometimes humiliated, but real. I didn't fake confidence, he said. I faked being okay. There's a difference. And in that difference, he found something stronger than fame. A reason to keep going. I don't think grief ever ends, Keanu said, eyes steady but distant. It just stops screaming and starts whispering. He didn't flinch when he said River Phoenix's name, but something behind his voice tightened like a door quietly locking. They met in 1990 on the set of I Love You to Death. Two young actors, two quiet souls drawn together not by Hollywood bravado but by something softer, something rare. He didn't talk loud, Keanu said. He listened loud. That's how you knew he cared. When My Own Private Idaho was casting, Phoenix almost passed on the role. Mike, a narcoleptic hustler, was vulnerable, broken, raw, but Keanu wouldn't let him walk away. He got on his motorcycle and rode over 1,300 miles from Toronto to Gainesville just to say, "I'll do it if you do it." And Phoenix said, "Yes, they don't make friends like that in this town," Keanu whispered. "But they did once." Then came Halloween night in 1993. The Viper Room. River collapsed on the sidewalk, drugs, overdose. Gone in seconds. "I was filming Speed when it happened," Keanu said. "I showed up the next day, but part of me never really did." He didn't cry on set. He didn't scream. He just stopped laughing. Sandra Bullock later said you could see it in his eyes, like a star that dimmed but never went out. That loss should have been enough to break anyone. But fate had more in store. In 1998, Keanu met Jennifer Sim. She was luminous, quiet, sharp-eyed, a production assistant for David Lynch. They fell hard, moved in quickly, and by the next year, she was pregnant with their daughter, Ava Archer Sim Reeves. She was due in April, Keanu said. His voice almost inaudible, but it happened in December. On Christmas Eve 1999, Jennifer gave birth to a stillborn child, 8 months along. Perfect, lifeless. "I held her," he said, eyes fixed on something only he could see. She looked like Jennifer. The grief shattered them. Jennifer struggled with depression. They separated but never fully let go. Some part of me thought we'd find each other again, and maybe they would have. On April 1st, 2001, they had brunch together. Light, hopeful. The next night, she was dead. A crash late at night, alone on Mulholland Drive. No seatbelt, prescription pills, white powder. A jeep wrapped around silence. Keanu paused. "I called the coroner's office the next morning," he said. "Not the police, not the hospital. I just knew. There was no lawsuit, no public breakdown, no interviews. Just the quiet vanishing of a future that would never happen. People think silence is peace," Keanu said. "Sometimes it's just the only thing left." He didn't mention her name again that day, but when he stood up to stretch, his hand briefly touched his chest. Just once, like brushing off dust or memory. "The script was in my hand," Keanu said, his fingers curling as if he could still feel the paper, "and so was my signature. But I never signed it." He didn't blink when he said it. He just stared at the floor for a second, then looked up as if he were seeing past the walls. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding, it was betrayal. The year was 2000. The Matrix had turned him into a global phenomenon. For the first time in his career, Keanu Reeves had power. Studios listened, directors waited, fans followed. And that's when it happened. A thriller called The Watcher appeared on his schedule. A film he had already declined, politely, firmly, clearly. Then came the call from his agent. "You're in," they said. He was stunned. "No, I'm not." But the contract said otherwise. His signature was on it. Looped and clean, unmistakable. Only it wasn't his. "They forged it," Keanu said, his voice flat. "Someone I knew, someone I trusted. They took something private and used it to trap me." He never named them. Not then, not now, not even when I asked gently once. "I don't want them to matter," he said. "Not anymore." At that time, Keanu was already walking through emotional wreckage. Grieving River, grieving Jennifer, grieving the daughter he never got to raise. So he faced a choice. Go public, go to court, wage war on someone inside his circle, or protect his peace. What little of it remained, and go through with it. He chose the latter. The Watcher was a failure. A shallow crime drama with a lifeless plot. Reeves, stiff and distant, played a serial killer he didn't believe in. You could see it on his face. Every scene like a sentence he was serving, not performing. Critics panned it. Rotten Tomatoes gave it 11%. Theaters emptied. "I was there physically," he said. "But not really. It was the only time in my career I'd been forced into a role, and it changed me. After that, I never left a single contract to chance. Never let anyone sign anything on my behalf. I learned too late how fragile trust really is. That film didn't just bruise his career. It cauterized something inside. From that point on, Keanu pulled inward. Fewer interviews, fewer red carpets. He became, as one journalist wrote, a ghost in plain sight. But there was no bitterness in his voice now. Only clarity. I didn't want revenge, he said. I just wanted distance and dignity. That forged signature never led to an arrest. No lawsuit, no headlines. But it did leave a scar. Not on paper, but on trust. They thought they were punishing me, Keanu said, almost with a shrug. But it turned out to be a gift. It was 1997. Speed had made over $350 million. Fox offered him a generous check to return for the sequel. Speed 2, Cruise Control. The script arrived. I read 5 pages, he said. A cruise ship. That's not speed, that's irony. He declined. Fox didn't take it well. They blacklisted me, Keanu said simply. 14 years. From 1997 to 2011, one of the biggest studios in Hollywood quietly closed its doors to him. They spread rumors that he'd gone flaky, that he cared more about his band than movies, that he couldn't be trusted. I didn't fight it, he said. I didn't have the energy. Instead, he did something that made no sense to anyone in Hollywood. He went to Winnipeg to perform Hamlet. A cold stage, modest pay, a Shakespeare play most actors fear. But for Keanu, it was the opposite of the industry. No cameras, no contracts, just the text in his voice. Each night I stood alone, and each night I remembered who I really was, while studios turned their backs. He explored what they couldn't control. He took risks, played flawed men, abusers, addicts, broken characters with broken lives. And then, out of that silence, came The Matrix. They didn't want me for Neo, he said. I wasn't the first choice, or the second, or the fifth. But I said yes and changed cinema forever. Fox, meanwhile, had exiled the man who would go on to define a generation of action films. They had tried to teach him a lesson. Instead, he rewrote his legacy. Sometimes rejection is a mirror, Keanu said. You look into it and see what they think you are, or you walk past it and find who you really are. By the time Fox lifted their ban, it didn't matter. He no longer needed their green lights. He'd already lit his own way. The first time Keanu read the John Wick script, he didn't speak for a minute. It was simple, he said. Almost too simple. A man loses a dog, and everything falls apart. But he understood the silence beneath the story. The quiet grief, the rage with nowhere to go. That wasn't a dog, he said. That was the last thread to his humanity. When it snapped, so did he. Keanu hadn't headlined a hit in years. Critics had written him off, studios had moved on. But Wick didn't ask him to be loud or clever or cool. It asked him to feel and to hide it well. They built the character around me, he said. Less dialogue, more presence. That was a kindness. John Wick wasn't just a comeback, it was a resurrection. A man no one expected to return, walking through fire with a gun in his hand and loss in his eyes. Audiences saw it instantly. The grief was real, the stillness was earned. I didn't act Wick, Keanu said. I understood him. The film made $86 million. Then came sequels, global premieres, fans shouting Baba Yaga at airports. The world remembered why they loved him. But not everyone clapped. In 2022, out of nowhere, Matthew Perry, once the beloved Chandler Bing, released a memoir. In it, a line. Why is it that talented guys like River Phoenix and Heath Ledger are dead, but Keanu Reeves still walks among us? Keanu raised no complaint. He never does. The internet erupted. Outrage, confusion, sympathy. Perry issued an apology days later, calling Keanu a random name, saying he meant nothing by it. But people knew better. And Keanu. He didn't tweet, didn't clap back, didn't ask for anything. People project their pain. He said softly when asked about it. Sometimes it lands on you. That doesn't mean you have to pick it up. That was